Hey everybody, welcome to the newest episode of the Hockey is Cool. That's the name. Podcast. I am joined today by Greg Young. You can find Greg on Japers Rink. You can hear him on Japers Rink Radio. You can find him on Twitter at GregY_JR, which is not for Junior. It's for Japers Rink.
You got it.
As I just found out a minute ago talking to Greg. So Greg is here tonight. We're going to talk about a couple things. We're going to cover one Caps related thing. We're going to talk about TJ Oshie and his contract. Greg and I have had a couple interactions recently on Twitter.
Nuclear level bad take, if I remember.
We've had a couple interactions on Twitter that Greg said we should talk about tonight. To go into more detail, we're also going to talk about the Florida Panthers and are they fun? Are they good? We're gonna get into them because they've been, honestly, when I look at the standings for the NHL this season, they're one of the teams that constantly surprise me the most of where they are right now. So, yes. Greg, thanks for being here, man. How's it going?
It's good. We were just talking a little before, but I have a couple of months left in the great city of Columbus, Ohio, and I've been cooking up a storm here. I've been like pickling random things. After this, I have a date with some hockey and nice beverage. So it's life is good for me. How are you doing, Pat?
I'm doing great, but I want to know before we get any further, I want to know the weirdest thing you pickled so far.
Oh, that's a good question. Okay, so okay. This isn't technically pickling, but I have made my own maraschino cherries, which because I've always thought like the ones that you get at the store are like way too sweet, and then you see the videos and they're these like chemical monstrosities with a million things in them and everything. And I'm like, I could just do that. Like, so I found this recipe online that was just like, basically sugar, water, and cherries, and I think a little bit of like vanilla extract, and it rules. It's been great. So I like throw that in like old fashions and stuff like that. It's been great.
Yeah, I was going to ask, I know them through having them in old fashions. I don't think I've ever consumed one otherwise. But yeah, okay.
They're great. Highly recommend.
Okay. And then second most important question, what beverage are you going to be enjoying tonight with your hockey?
So I've been doing this thing called a scofflaw. So I'm a big whiskey guy. I lived in Cincinnati for a couple of years, which everyone will say is like, it's like right near Kentucky, obviously. And it's like kind of whiskey central. So I've been doing this thing called the scofflaw, which is, it is rye whiskey, vermouth, grenadine, freshly squeezed lemon juice, and a dash of orange bitters. And sometimes I'll throw a maraschino cherry in there too. And
that is fancy, man. I'm impressed.
It's cool. Well, it produces this like it tastes amazing. It looks a little weird. When I posted it on Instagram, people have compared it to like crab rangoon sauce, which isn't necessarily. I could like do fancy garnishing stuff if I really wanted to, because I love making drinks and I kind of love doing the artistic side of it. So I could make it fancy, but I mean, it tastes amazing. It has like a million things in it, but it's actually pretty easy to make. The only thing you really have to do is just like have like a little cobbler thing and shaker, and so you just throw it all in there, and it's pretty solid.
Okay, I'm impressed. That's a lot of effort, and I mean that is a compliment, not a critique. I think that's
well, great. I also have like I'm a big beer guy too, and so it's finally almost like summer beer season, which is more my jam. So I have some of those too if I'm not quite kind of feeling up for making a drink.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. So TJ Oshie is a guy who we've interacted with. I believe I did call one of your replies to my tweets.
a nuclear level take. I remember that.
Yeah. Which, Twitter is just great for having long drawn out discussions with lots of nuance and, being very measured. So it was like I was just tweeting in a very measured way, like I always try to do, and calling it nuclear level bad. But I guess.
Well, I mean, we all have like the it's it can be tough when you disagree with something to kind of like. I remember like when I was young, I would have this problem, like a lot of kind of angry young white males on the internet. That's not a thing at all, right? But like, of just being like, okay, like make sure that I, and like, your thing was totally fine. Obviously, it was like, I don't care. But yeah, no, it's, I think sometimes like I like a lot of people can kind of like fall into the, this person has a mild disagreement on me with TJ Oshie, this is the end of the world.
Yeah. So hopefully the world won't end tonight. But so
maybe lately.
I guess one thing we didn't really get into, because I think we just went back and forth a couple times on it, was kind of like how to frame it, right? And I'm not sure like because I think you have a more critical opinion of maybe Oshie and his contract than I do at this point. Maybe we'll figure that out. But I guess like, is your viewpoint that like the Oshie contract, like when it's done, we're going to say it was a bad contract, or that like from here on out, it's likely not to be a good contract, or something else?
Yes, no. I think it's much more the second than the first. I mean, like they signed him, and then he has been like I pulled the numbers on this today, kind of in anticipation of this question, and he's been like an above average value for the team, like year over year. He's consistently very good on the power play in terms of shot generation, which isn't a huge surprise because of the position he's in. But he also is better 5-on-5 than I thought he would be. Like, I mean, he's the problem. So I think it's much more the second. Part of my problem with it going forward is obviously 5.75 over 4 more years is a lot of money. And you look at what he's doing this year and the way he's providing value this year, because he's getting at least according to kind of the HBF analytics hockey page, which is a useful little metric, and I double checked a lot of these stats along Natural Stat Trick, is that he's been providing a lot of his value actually this year on defense. Which is kind of counterintuitive, but it's true. So you look at it, and he is actually one of the Caps' better forwards in terms of shot suppression, which it makes a certain kind of sense when you look at it, because he's always engaged to the defensive zone. He never takes a shift off, which I think is what we all love about him, right? Like you look at him and you're just, this guy's a bulldog, and he would run through anyone to stick up for a teammate, and that rules. And obviously there's an intangible impact of that we can't measure, right? Like that he's obviously a huge leader in the Capitals. He's very good in the community. He's all those kind of things. So that's important, and I don't want to undercount that. That being said, I'm a little concerned about, anyone who's providing a lot of their value defensively, particularly as he gets older. I'm concerned that when the legs start to go, and you can tell with Oshie that they've started to go a little bit, right? Like he definitely is not the kind of skater that he used to be. Right. So my concern is that as he gets older, if he's not going to keep shooting 3%, obviously, but if the offense is starting to maybe decline a little bit and he's providing increasing amounts of value on defense, I'm concerned about the sustainability level of that, particularly with another 4 years on the contract going forward. And the fact that the Caps need to do things like re-sign Vrana, they need to figure out the Ovechkin contract. So I'm a little nervous about that. And I say, okay, if I'm Seattle, like and they take that contract off the Caps books, like I wouldn't be totally broken up about that, at least from an analytics standpoint, independent of all the stuff he does either in the room or off the ice.
Yeah, no, I think that's all fair. And just so nobody thinks I'm revising history, when the contract was signed, like I was fully opposed to it, right? I mean, he was 30 years old. He was coming off a season in which like his 5-on-5 shooting percentage was like double anywhere it was, previously in his career. And he didn't maintain that, but it's actually like, the contract has been good so far. Like you were saying, he was a core player on a team that won the cup. And so like, so really at this point, regardless of what he does the rest of the way, like to me, it's like, I was wrong when this started. Like at the end, like, I don't care what happens the rest of the way. This was a good contract. You got, what is he in his 4th year now?
I think that's right. I could pull up his Cap Friendly, which I should have. So
you've gotten, he's in his 4th year. So so far you've gotten 3 good years out of him. That includes him being a core player in a cup. Like, I don't care what it is the rest of the way. If you pay for 5 bad years on the back end of that, like that's kind of it's the price of doing business when you're in like a win now mode. And I think in terms of like with the rest of the way, I certainly worry about it too, like you do. But I think that, and with Seattle, right, like none of these decisions exist in a vacuum. It's like, okay, well, it's this guy or that guy. Like we don't know all the like moving pieces, right? It's not just like Oshie or this dude. It's like, well, if they take this then causes these next 7 things to happen, right, for the Caps. So for us, it's hard to know that. But I will say that I guess my the way that I look at it now with like where Ovechkin is in age, where Backstrom is in age, is basically, do I think Oshie will contribute to the team being competitive next season, or would that money be spent better elsewhere? And I think as of right now, I'm in the former on that. I think I don't care about the end of his contract at this point, even if we could get rid of it, because it's year to year right now, I think.
Sure.
And so
this might be like the last cap. I mean, maybe next year, maybe. But this, I think we all agree that like this is like, I've gotten sick of talking about this on Japers Rink Radio, but like the window is like, even if it's not completely shut, it's clearly like, this is like maybe this year, maybe next year, then like you're starting to really look at some hard decisions after that.
Yeah, agreed. And that could come sooner than we think, right? We could be at the end of the season talking about like, yeah, it absolutely makes sense to do this with Oshie and retool in this way because the team might not be as competitive next year, right? But at least for now, I'm just kind of in the camp of, I think next year's roster will be better with him and his $5.75 million cap hit on the team than without it. But again, that depends on like, okay, so then what happens if you keep him, right? And we don't know all those things.
We don't. And that's the tricky part, right? Is that I think it's like, I think if you would acknowledge this, right, that's a tough question, right? I don't think that there's a clear answer about whether, because I think you could also argue that one of the Caps' biggest problems right now is that they have very little speed on the forward group, right? And so and does Oshie contribute to that in a positive way? And I mean, no, but like maybe he provides value in other places. So I think it's like kind of a tough question though. And the fact that it's a tough question, I think right now, when I'm looking at the rest of the contract going forward, I say, well, if it's a tough question now, in like 3 to 4 years, it's clearly going to be, probably on the other side of that equation. So I think when I say like, I wouldn't love the contract going forward, I think that's kind of what I mean, of like this Oshie isn't, if we're going to say, okay, he's going to be a surplus value this year and next year, I'm willing to hear that. I think that makes some kind of sense. But I think after that, you're like, okay, this is going to be tougher. And I get what you're saying too about that. This might be the end for the Caps in a couple of years. And so let's try to max the window out now. So that makes a certain kind of sense to me.
Okay. All right. So, unfortunately, I think we agree more than we disagree on this.
Yeah. Well, the thing is like, I think you could say, I think even with it, you would say Oshie is like a close call, at least for me, I think it's like, okay, I'm like 52% I wouldn't rather have this contract and 48% that I would. So I think like, I don't think there's a clear, it's 100% you'd like to have that contract or 100% you wouldn't like to have that contract.
Right.
He's not Brett Seabrook.
No, that's a good way of putting it because there's a reasonable scenario where what I am saying is true of like they need to treat next year as next year and forget any year after that. There's a scenario where they approach it that way, and it's still okay to lose Oshie to Seattle. I think that's hard. It's hard for me to see at this point, but that scenario definitely exists.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Just there's so many open variables at the Caps, and I mean, obviously we're all thinking Ovechkin, but I mean, for me, I'm going to be really curious to see what the next Rana contract looks like too.
Well, I mean, yeah.
If they play him, I mean, one of the weird things is like the fact that they refuse to play him 5-on-5 is almost like suppressing his value in a way. And it's like, all right, well, maybe that'll help them re-sign him. Although I think it makes the team worse in the immediate term.
He was dead last on the team in 5-on-5 minutes, and I think overall minutes last night.
Yes, you were right. I pulled those numbers. Yep, yeah, he was. Which I think we all we had joked about it on Twitter. I think we all expected that a sprung Kuznetsov Rana line was never going to see the ice, but I really like, given how much of a zero the Hagelin Dowd Hathaway line is. Like, it's just, I don't know. Like, that's kind of silly to me, even though I'm sure there's like a coaching reason for it. I'm just not totally sure it's a coherent one.
Yeah. I mean, it's I've obviously not on this podcast. It's only episode 2, but on Twitter, I don't want to beat a dead horse too much myself on how much I wish more that they'd play him. And I know there are things that I'm not privy to and don't know and et cetera, but it just seems like when you have one of the more efficient goal scorers in the league, he should not be last on your team in ice time. That just seems like I know there's more nuance to it, but that seems like a pretty simple statement.
I had Samantha Pell on. I think it was last episode, and I asked her that same question, and she I think was also a little I think it was I asked her right after maybe he got benched, maybe he didn't against the Devils, and I think she was just as like a little baffled by it too. I think I just am not. The concern I have is that you look at the Caps offense this year, and it is like way down. And they're getting by on like really pretty good shot suppression metrics. Like the Caps high danger chances per 60 is the best it's been since 2007-8.
Right.
Which is interesting to me. But like, is this a way I think the Caps are going to like consistently be effective? I don't know. Although it seems to be working this year, I guess. So
we did have one question come in.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see the chat on the right-hand side.
Oh boy. I've been on private, but we got one.
Can we talk about what a steal the trade was and why the Blues did it? I honestly don't remember enough context on the Blues at that point.
I actually remember a little bit of this.
Do you? All right. Why did the Blues trade Oshie to the Caps for basically nothing?
So this was right when I think the Blues were in their kind of needing to shake it up mode. Because I remember that there was like we need to like trade one of our stars because I think they had either not made the playoffs or they hadn't made it very far. And they were like, let's shake up the room. And I always think those trades are stupid because it's like, all right, I will absolutely take your good player who by all accounts is great in the locker room for a laughably low sum. I think there also might have been cap issues too, if I remember correctly with the Blues there. But it was like that was like a master move by McClellan, right? Of just like, hey, here's a team that feels like they need to shake it up for maybe a stupid reason. And I will happily come in here and take your TJ Oshie, who then I think was like 28 or something and in the prime of his career, and put him on the line, put him in the top 6 and just let it roll. And he's been great for the Caps.
Yeah. McClellan has made a lot of trades that I like. That one might be the best though. I think that would be.
He did that and the Justin Williams signing in the same offseason.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's impressive. The Justin Williams one is a little different in a way because clearly like there was a very limited market for Justin Williams. Like he didn't in the sense of like there were only a couple teams he really wanted to go to. And particularly because he was like looking to win a cup that year and everything like that. And Brouwer, Copley, and a 3rd round pick because now I'm on the comments too. I could see it. It was just kind of a no-brainer deal. And I also think that I remember Troy Brouwer, that was like the year that they traded him was the year he was in the Oshie spot in the power play, which is a very beneficial spot to be. It can get you a lot of goals.
Pump up that trade value. Yeah.
Oh, hey man. That's Oshie's in that spot now and it's the same deal. He's getting a lot of goals. Although I think he provides, needless to say, way more value on the power play than Troy Brouwer.
Yes. All right. So switching gears a little bit to the other topic we were going to cover tonight.
Let's do it.
So and this came up, we were kind of exchanging messages about what we could talk about. And you had mentioned that, I can't remember exactly how you worded it. I think you basically said, I'm for some reason pretty into the Florida Panthers. It was basically the gist. And I thought that was interesting. And so I kind of want to talk about 2 bigger topics. And, one is, I guess, why are the Panthers so good? Because they're overachieving this year. I think what basically they weren't expected to be a bad team, but no, but they
were expected to be a bubble team. I think that was like pretty clearly what people were thinking.
Yeah. But also, but before we get into that, I'm more interested in how you became a Florida Panthers guy because, I do think they have a few interesting players, right? But I can't think of any time in the last several years where I've said, I'm going to put on a Panthers game. I've put on the Panthers to watch them play other teams. Yeah. But
it seems like the Panthers versus the Caps, like that's always it seems like the Caps are always sleepwalking whenever they go to South Florida. My favorite, by the way, is when you search for the Florida Panthers on Google, they have a whole section on their website of where is sunrise, which I enjoy a lot. But yeah, I mean, I think for the Panthers, for me, I will say I, like a lot of Jewish people on the East Coast, have relatives in the South Florida area, so I find myself there quite a bit. And I've been to a couple of Florida Panthers games. I remember when I was young, one of the first games I went to as a Caps fan was they played the Florida Panthers and just absolutely obliterated them. But we had good seats, and it was right near the Florida media guy, and he just like gave us a bunch of things. So somewhere in my parents' house, in their basement, there exists I think it's 2003, 2004 Florida Panthers like media guide, which rules. Like, and I think like one of the cool things about being it's less true with the Caps as they've gotten good, and kind of a lot more people have hopped on the Caps kind of fandom, which is great, and I love it. But one of the cool things about kind of these a little off the beaten path teams is that they really want to have fans. Like they'll go out of their way in a lot of cases to really try to recruit people to come. And I think that's a nice position to be in. It kind of reminds me of when I talked to JP about the start of the Caps, like letting bloggers into the press box because they needed to get buzz around the team because they were terrible at the time. Right. So it's kind of cool with
the $10 tickets. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, you see like now, like, I mean, people like JP and people like Ian Olin now is all over all over, like, kind of is a much more active participant in terms of being involved in the media, which rules. It's great to have that kind of perspective in there. And I think what's cool about Florida is that they're really excited about having people participate. And that's exciting, even as the team has really struggled over the years. Okay.
Yeah. And all right. But hey, I want to be clear. I'm all for fun. And I think it's great that you're into a team that I did not really expect you to be into. I think it's fun.
Apparently, I also just love mustaches too.
So I guess, if you had to, as Florida Panthers expert and number one fan.
Oh boy. Neither one of which is, well, expert part, maybe a little more.
Both of which we've established are very true statements.
Oh, 100%.
I was looking back at playoff odds like before the season and now, et cetera. I think Dom on The Athletic before the season had the Panthers at like 40% chance, with, like you were saying, a bubble team. And now I checked yesterday and they were 95%.
Yeah, so right.
So tell me, what the heck has happened in Florida this season that they are doing this?
Yeah. So, okay, I think there's two big things, one of which is in their control and one of which is not. So let's talk about the thing that's not in their control, which is they were a bubble team. And who are the other teams that were going to be on that bubble? It was realistically, everyone was thinking it's going to be the Nashville Predators and the Columbus Blue Jackets. And surprise, both those teams are terrible. And so gave a opening to the Panthers, who, I mean, like that wasn't necessarily in their control. We didn't expect. I think a lot of people were saying, okay, the end might be near for the Nashville Predators, but I don't think many people expected this, right? So that their utter collapse absolutely helped the Panthers. And then Columbus, I think there's obviously bigger issues going on there. I think there's the question of whether Tortorella even wants to be there or not. Clearly, like, they're fighting with half of their team. It's not a good situation, it sounds like there. Yeah. So I think that's a big thing, is that the teams that the Panthers were supposed to compete with collapsed. And so that really helped them. And so you look at who they're competing with right now for a playoff spot, and up there is the Blackhawks, who are not very good and who are getting a lot of good goaltending that I don't expect to continue for very long. And then it's kind of nothing. And so it makes total sense. The other thing, though, that has been more Panther specific is defensively, they are on it. You look at expected goals against, and I think it's fourth in the league while having a league average offense, and that'll work. That will absolutely get it done. And I mean, obviously, it's a lot of the attention is on Barkov, and it should be, because he is, I think when I pulled these numbers last, a 65% expected goals player, and consistently Yeah, he's like playing Mark Stone level defense while also playing really well offensively. And so they basically so the Panthers spread around their minutes a lot. So he doesn't actually get as much elite competition as you would think. They spread that. Quenneville's a big proponent of spreading that out pretty evenly, at least among the forward group. But like he has just dominated any minutes, and he's dragged a couple of players. I really like Duclair, but obviously like Verhaeghe isn't going to necessarily win get a ton of heart votes there or whatever. But Barkov is kind of doing a great job of carrying that line, and then they have some depth in there with Huberdeau, and I think getting Patrick Hornquist is a really good signing for them. And it's interesting too. I think everyone was kind of expecting, like, there was rumor that Keith Yandel was going to get healthy scratch to start the year, and which made the news because he had that crazy consecutive game streak. But he's actually been really good for them, and so they have a lot of depth. They have him playing with former Capitals great Radko Gudas, and actually that line's been that pair has been incredible too. And anytime you can do that, you get it gives you kind of a lot of room for Aaron Ekblad to maybe play a little bit easier minutes and kind of help them out a little bit too.
Yeah, and I think with that top six and their forward group, with I think Barkov. I don't know. Maybe I'm giving him too much credit, but the thing that makes him so great, or one of the things that then makes their team so good, is being able to throw like Duclair and Verhaeghe with him. Duclair's a talented player, but not necessarily a guy who you sign and is going to say, "Oh, he's playing on our top line." But he can be a complementary player there. And then Verhaeghe's like, I don't know, like just a guy that. He's a guy. He's a fine NHL player, right? But I don't think coming into the season anybody was like, "Yep, he's going to be on the first line with Barkov."
You would have liked him to see him on the third line, right? Like that seems like a perfectly reasonable place for Carter Verhaeghe to go.
And then that just frees up Huberdeau and Hornquist to go spread talent around the lineup elsewhere. And again, I know the team's more than Barkov, but it's just amazing with having him as that rock there that can kind of elevate two competent but not great players, like what that who can then play on the first line, what that does to trickle down through the rest of their lineup.
Yeah, and I mean, there's just it's tricky because it's such an NHL cliche to say this, but it is true. There's nothing like having an elite number one center. There just isn't. Like right. I know I sound like a 200 hockey men kind of quote, but anytime you need a shift to either shut down the team's best players or to maybe get you a goal late when you need it, like Barkov could do that. And it's a really valuable thing. And so I think it's been a lot of their top players are playing really, really well. And then their depth has been producing enough. And in a division where the bubble teams have collapsed around them, that's going to be more than enough, I think, to make the playoffs. And maybe I would expect them to probably get to play Carolina in the first round. And I'm sure as a fellow Caps fan, we're all going to be rooting for Florida very heavily in that series because I think we're all tired of Carolina. Oh, I can't speak for you. Are you tired? Are you tired of Carolina? Or
it's fun to watch them lose. Yeah.
I think they're like the thirstiest team in the NHL. Like JP and I like joked about that.
No, it's fun to watch them lose because they're fun and they're good, but they're also thirsty. That's I'm good with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Their Twitter account's a little much. Although the Caps Twitter account's been upping their game lately too. Did you see that one against Post Flyers?
What did it say?
It was great. It was like I think it was like Flyers fans starting pack, and it was like batteries and all this other stuff. No,
I didn't see that.
And it had the famous photo of when they threw their bracelets onto the ice of Wayne Simmons and Alex Ovechkin begging the fans to stop.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, was there a more enjoyable hockey game as a Caps fan than that game right there? Put them up 3-0 against the Flyers. Well,
that's
pre-cup run, I would say.
About as good as it gets. Yeah.
Yes.
So you mentioned though old Caps friend Radko Gudas, who I believe he's playing on the second pair with Yandel right now.
Yep, that's right. Yes, he is.
Right? So catch up. Any Caps fans who might be feeling nostalgic about Gudas's long successful run with the Caps. How has his season been overall in Florida?
He's been fine, I think. Like, he's not someone who's gonna light the world afire, as the Capitals fans have known. But I think I think starting to embrace, I think, a little more of a role of a kind of steady defensive defenseman, and he's gonna lay a lot of hits, which I have middling opinion of the importance of laying a bunch of hits, as I think a lot of analytics bloggers would say. But I think putting him with Yandel makes sense. Yandel, obviously, towards the twilight of his career, but could still skate, could still move the puck around and everything like that. And you can do a lot worse for a second pair, particularly because they're eating some tough minutes, but it's not like they're consistently, gonna be playing against like the team's best players. So yeah, like I think it kind of works for them. Like Gudas he's not gonna light the world afire, but I think if he can kind of embrace his role as a defensive defenseman, and there have been indications before he came to the Caps that he was actually better defensively, I think, than he was given credit for in a lot of ways. That I think that that's something that has value. It's not something that has a ton of value, but it has some value.
And I guess to transition to the one part of the team we haven't talked about.
Yes.
How do you see the goaltending situation playing out? I mean, Bobrovsky's in year 2 of his 10-year? What was it?
It's like 8 years or something like that. It's bad.
Was it like 7 years, 70 million? The term was
something like that. Yeah, it's like 10 million. Yeah, I remember that. It's
7 years, and he's in year 2, and things are not going great for him.
No, they are not.
How do you see this? How do you see it playing out over the rest of the season? If you had to take a guess.
Well, I mean, it's tricky, right? Because the other piece to mention, obviously, is they have him. They have Drieger, who's been really good. He's actually been like one of the top goalies in the NHL. But they also have the prospect Knight on the kind of in the wings too, who's really good. So there's been all kinds of reports that Drieger was on the trading block, which which makes a certain kind of sense if you say, okay, I think the Panthers are a bubble team and this year doesn't really matter. And so let's get value for a guy who's overplaying his contract. Like that makes a certain kind of sense, but clearly the Panthers are a playoff team and I think they can make some noise. So I don't really get the idea of benching Drieger. The thing I will say is that Bobrovsky's been a little bit better this year than he was last year. Like last year he was bad. And this year he's slightly above average when I pulled the numbers, at least on 5v5 in terms of expected save percentage or in terms of goals saved above average. So he's been at least okay. So, I mean, I think like going forward, you kind of just keep with the split. I think they've actually split the starts pretty evenly between Drieger and Bobrovsky. And I think you kind of keep that going. Like you see, okay, maybe like Bobrovsky can kind of, with a more manageable workload, maybe he can keep being slightly above average, which man, oh man, that contract looks terrible. But I mean, for this year with them being a contender, that might work at least for the time being.
Yeah. When they signed that deal, it was just like, man, you invested how much in a goalie?
A lot of money to spend a goalie.
Yeah. But even then, I did not imagine it going this far south this quickly for them. And like you said, he's been a bit better this season, but if he could get back, I mean, if he could go on like a 20-game run, like we saw him play in Columbus his last couple of years there, I mean, this team would be unbeatable.
Well, I mean, the thing is, like, I think he still has that talent, right? I don't think anyone would say he probably, although who really knows with goaltending, it's much harder and it can be much more variable year to year and everything like that. And this is all, by the way, subtext to why you don't want to pay a goalie a huge amount of money unless it's Henrik Lundqvist. Henrik Lundqvist is like kind of the one exception to all of this rule. But I mean, because the other thing is that I remember, I think it was JP, Kevin, and I were all talking on the Slack about this, about like which contract's worse, Bobrovsky or Carey Price. Because both of them are terrible. They're like, Carey Price, I think, basically has the same contract with Bobrovsky, and he's actually been worse this year than Bob has. So it's, don't pay goalies, but I think that if you can go on a 20-gamer like that and it happens to coincide with the playoffs, this is a team that they've held their own against Tampa and they've held their own mostly against Carolina. And so I think that if in a 7-game series with them playing as good defense as they do, if Bobrovsky can go on a heater, then they can really make some noise.
Yeah. And And to your point about Price and Bobrovsky and paying goalies and all, I mean, I was trying to think, and was it? I mean, if we turn back the clock like 2 years exactly, were they two of the best goalies in the world at that point, or would you have to go back 3 years? You think for Price?
Well, so okay, the thing is, like, with Bobrovsky, yes, I think like very clearly yes. Carey Price, you look at his stats and they're like a little more mixed than people remember. I think like we all remember like him winning the gold and, you know, him like with that one crazy year with the Canadiens where he made 1 million saves and carried a bad team into the playoffs and everything like that. But he's and also he pulls like every single list of NHL players like top goalies, which is, you know, you could take that for whatever value you do. I think it has some value, right? Like NHL players know a lot more about this stuff than I do, and they see a lot more of them than I see. But at the same time, like, he hasn't really been great like for a few years now. And it's kind of, except that he can look amazing during any one series. And I mean, we talk about all this, and he stole that series in the bubble against the Penguins. Thank God he did.
Right.
So it's like, so again, this is all, I've spent a lot of words saying I have no idea with goaltending.
Yeah.
Because I have no idea.
I think that's most people. And like you're saying, that's kind of why the Bobrovsky contract was a bad idea from the start, even if you got a couple great years out of him.
Yes. They could have like paid, I don't know, like Greiss wasn't available at that time, but like pay like a Greiss like $3 million or something like that. And that's better. Like, you're better off. And they also had a top prospect. And I don't know if they had drafted Spencer Knight at the time. I don't know exactly how that worked. I don't totally remember. But I mean, now they have a great prospect and you're paying your top goalie $10 million a year. That's terrible.
Yeah, it's a mess. I mean, luckily the team isn't a mess right now for the fans in Sunrise and for you. But yeah, that contract is not good. Yeah, I feel like, I don't know necessarily if I have anything specific or a specific question, but I feel like we can't touch on the Florida Panthers without talking about Aaron Ekblad. Like, and I don't even know that, like I said, I don't have a specific question, but I just feel like obviously he needs to come up in a situation about the Florida Panthers, because like you were saying, that second pairing that they have with Gudas is able, and Yandel is able to be what it is. And I think a lot of that is kind of a trickle down effect, kind of like Barkov is in the one center spot with how Ekblad is on the top pair. Yeah. So yeah, like we said, as a Florida Panthers expert, where how much praise is too much praise for a guy like Aaron Ekblad?
Well, I mean, he's been good this year. I mean, like, if you look at kind of his fancy stats, he's like kind of right along the Florida Panthers train of really doing well in terms of shot suppression. He's again, like 54% expected goals, which is like right where you would want him to be, playing top minutes and everything like that. And I mean, he gets a lot of key minutes. He's big on their power play, which, you know, can kind of go up and down a little bit. But I mean, he's a really valuable player for them. I think when he was drafted, the hope was that he was going to be like not Erik Karlsson, that's a little extreme, but like, you know, it was going to be like a clear, like, this is like the best defender on the team and one of like the top 10 best players in the NHL. And is he going to do that? Probably not. Like, I don't really see that, but there's still value in him being the team's best defenseman and being able to play a lot of minutes and be able to consistently tilt the ice. And he's done that this year for them. So I mean, he's not like someone who I think is going to be like, you know, amazing or anything, but I mean, he's dragging Mackenzie Weegar around the ice, and there's value in that. And it allows them to kind of even out a lot of the defensive assignments between the Yandel pair and Gustav Forsling and Kevin Connu, like, you know, kind of at the end there. So I think having Yandel being as like solid and dependable as Ekblad, as solid and dependable as he is, has been really valuable for the Panthers.
Yeah, to kind of bring it full circle back to the Caps where we started, I think one thing that the Panthers have in like their top center and their top defender is something that the Caps, you know, worries me about the Caps, and that is they elevate the players around them, right? And I think that's a lot of the concern now with the Caps is like, yes, their stars are good, but are their stars as good as other teams' stars at this point? And
are they the transcendent talents of this point?
Right. And can you put like a lesser player with a Kuznetsov and he'll elevate him, and therefore you'll get to put Oshie somewhere else in the lineup, or or Vrana somewhere else in the lineup to kind of spread that talent around. I think that's it's a nice thing that the Panthers have there with that, because I think that's, if something's going to bring the Capitals down this year, I think it's going to be the lack of, like you said, transcendent talent.
Yeah, and I mean, like, this is part of every team's contending deal, right? I mean, Alex Ovechkin was that, and Nicholas Backstrom and John Carlson were those transcendent talents. And, you could put, and the Caps did put a lot of people with Ovechkin, and he made them look really good, right? That was kind of the miracle of, him and Backstrom, too. So, they were granted, obviously Mike Knuble was like a perfect complementary player, but he was very much at the tail end of his career when the Caps got him, and they put him on the line with them, and they made him look really good too. So, I think that Dom's big athletic preview of the Caps talked about this a lot, about that the big question is, can Ovechkin and Backstrom and, their top players continue to tilt the ice in a way that's going to be commiserate with the value of their contracts. And I think it's tough to say that they're doing that this year, but the one good thing is that the Caps do have a decent amount of depth this year in terms of, you look at, for instance, like Lars Eller, who I think one of the people had talked about is having a fantastic year. I did this on a What Lies Beneath, but I think we all think about Lars Eller as the Swiss Army knife, who's really good defensively, gets you in there to win a faceoff. His offensive generation this year has been outstanding. And he earned those shifts with Ovechkin when Kuznetsov was out. And so are the Caps top players going to be able to provide a ton of value above what their contracts say? Probably not. Although, Backstrom obviously has provided a ton of value this year. But I think at the same time, the Caps' depth has been strong this year so far. And so, they have Nick Jensen on the third pair, who's been crushing his minutes whenever he's been playing them. And so, that might be enough for them to probably make the playoffs, although it's definitely a lot less secure than you would like, unfortunately, for as well as they've been playing. So we'll see.
I appreciate that Lars Eller shout out. He's he's such a pivotal part of this team at this point, even though he is, quote unquote, only the third line center, first line at times. He's just, you take him out of the lineup and it's just a completely different third line. And him and Panik have been basically, whenever they've been on the ice, the team's been great.
Richard Panik, by the way, this year is suppressing shots at a level that is Mark Stone-esque. So he's been really good defensively too. And it's to the point where he hasn't provided the kind of goals that you would like for that contract, but he's a valuable player for the Caps. And
absolutely.
I'd love to see that third line brought together at some point again. The magic third line of Sherry, Eller, and Panik. That might be something to revisit come playoff time if the Caps can kind of get Kuznetsov and Backstrom being able to really center their own lines effectively.
Right. No, I think that third line would win you a lot of battles in terms of.
The fourth line might subsequently lose, but you never know.
Well, if you just play them a couple minutes less per night.
That might be good. But,
cool. Well,
I guess there's a reason they pay Laviolette the big bucks and they pay me the minimum bucks.
They pay us nothing. They pay him a lot, and he makes that decision. So I'm sure.
I'm sure.
Cool, man. Well, thanks for coming on to educate me and educate everybody else about the Florida Panthers. I think they're. I am going to turn on one of their games sometime soon now.
I recommend it.
You've gotten me excited about them. And
here's the thing. Also Steve Goldstein, by the way, their announcer is a delight. And I'm sure you've seen Panthers highlights, right? When they score a goal, it's Goldstein is the proudest person in the world. This is his baby, and his baby has scored. He's so happy, and it's just I wish I had the kind of joy for anything in life that Steve Goldstein has for Florida Panthers hockey.
Okay, I'm even more excited now. So
there you go. Get your Panthers jersey. We're in. Get the I don't even know what they call their fans. The Panther Packers.
Well, post-vaccine, me and you are going down to Sunrise in our jerseys and catching a game.
Oh hell yeah, let's do it. Sounds great.
All right. So again, he is Greg Young. Go find him on Japers Rink. Go find him on Japers Rink Radio. Greg, thanks for doing this, man. This is fun. We'll have to talk again soon.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you for having me on.
All right, man.